Good morning, and everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Manny Talks Shooting, the podcast where I talk to anyone on the industry that I feel like I want to talk to. We talk about competition, self-defense, training, gear, building. I don't know what we're going to talk about today. Today, I am very honored to have Mr. Aj Zito, the man with the longest Instagram handle ever. AJ, how are you
Fact.
tonight, sir?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I am great. I'm glad you are here, and I'm excited because we're going to talk about some 1911s today, hopefully.
Awesome. One of my favorite topics, of
Yep.
course.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm glad to have you on. I'll say the first time I ever heard of you was from Scott Jedlinski's podcast, the Get Better podcast. If you haven't listened to the I know he hasn't made any episodes lately, guys. Go out, watch the back catalog. AJ might be like episode 6 or 7, I think. Not off the top of my head, but he's early on the show. And that's how I found out about you.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a fun one. That was a fun time. I think that was one of my earliest podcasts, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And you're not wrong. I mean, you're one of the, if I was going to send a gun out, there's 3 people in this world I would send a gun to: David Defensive Creations, Joe Chambers, and Aj Zito.
thank you.
And I mean, from talking to people who've had your work and seeing your work online, it's just one of those things that the old school builder in you still does. And
Yeah.
there's something about the old school ways.
I totally agree. Hence why I still do what I do.
Mm-hmm. And you're able to make a living doing what you do, but you do a lot too. I mean,
I do. I do. One of the crazy things about my life is I have lots of things I do, and which can make it difficult at times because sometimes you really just want to build guns, and sometimes you really just want to shoot guns,
mm-hmm.
and you got to balance, all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so big about trying to balance your life. Like I found the best way to manage my time was being 100% divulged in what I was doing, but I had to lay out a schedule of what I was doing. So at this time to this time is I'm doing this. So I'm 100% focused on my dry fire or making lunch or getting ready for work. Like I had to be like, nope, something's got to sit down. Luckily enough at work, when I go to work, is I'm very flexible. As long as I do my job, I'm able to manage content, do the filler stuff at work while I'm able to. But
Hmm.
if I'm there in my dry fire time, that's what I got to do. Or if I'm going to make a video, it's what I have to do. I can't be like, I'm going to make a video and then dick around with something else. And then I'm like, well, that time's gone. Game's over.
Yep,
On something
absolutely.
else. But AJ, I know who you are. The people might not necessarily know who Aj Zito is. So AJ, who are you? And maybe how'd you get into shooting?
Sure. So obviously, I'm Aj Zito. I run a company called Practical Performance. For my real job, I guess, I am a full-time 1911, 2011 gunsmith slash pistol smith. I also teach shooting, performance-based shooting for both myself and with certain other companies as well. Um, I am a former military guy, former executive protection, private security detail on the teaching side, and I have been seriously shooting, I would say, since like 2009. And I really got into it because I got back from a deployment, realized while I was on my deployment that I was nowhere near as proficient as I thought I was, nor should I have been, if that makes sense. So I was like, I really need to get this shooting thing down. So I started shooting, and I fell in love with shooting pistols purely from a defensive slash tactical standpoint. That was really my only goal with shooting until I got out of the military. I went into the private sector, uh, trying to pick up contracts, and again, it was just all defensive, tactically based shooting until, oh man, 2012, 2013, sometime around there, when I got into competitive shooting, which changed my entire world.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it kind of puts everything into perspective and how our egos are bigger than our actual shooting ability at some point.
100%, 100%.
And I found that out when my first 4 hour class. My first 4 hour class was with Steve Fisher,
Okay.
and it was a handgun accuracy class. And you learn that you are not as good as you think you are.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Honestly, I'd been to a lot of classes before I shot my first competition. And don't get me wrong, like I can remember I shot like an IDPA match or a couple IDPA matches in 2002 or 3 or 4, somewhere in there, and it was like, whatever. But I think 2012 or 13, I shot my first USPSA match, and I thought I was pretty good, right? I had, you know, taken a bunch of classes, been top shooter. I was the best shooter at the company I was working for at the time, and I was like, I got this. This ain't no thing. And I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So wrong. So it changed my life. 100% changed my life. It was an ego kick, and it was absolutely what I needed at the time. So,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people need that kick in the pants, that ego check at the door, just get the ego checked early. I know it's helped my progression knowing that then, and instead of just feeling pumped up about, oh, I'm the best. Now, there's a difference between my mental game and saying, I know what I can do and being, accepting that, but knowing that, uh, don't be not saying that I'm cocky about things, but being real with myself is more
sure.
essentially what it has to be. Because my self-image, if I don't know if you're big into the mental management side of things or dabbled into maybe reading that book from Lanny,
Yep.
but my self-image says one thing and I align myself with that, but I don't go past what that says.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. You know, Speaking of the mental management thing, because I know you've had Steve on,
Mm-hmm.
Steve Anderson, and Steve's obviously all in on the mental management portion of things. Um, I am to a point. It's kind of like when everyone was all about neurolinguistic processing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was like, it's your other strong hand because you will magically shoot better. Well, that's not the case, right?
Right.
Um, and I think mental management takes you to a point, right? Your self image takes you to a point. Uh, but there has to be skill to back that up, just like anything. You
Mm-hmm.
know what you're capable of, and you should be very intimately aware of what you're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that mental management will take you to a point. It should never hold you back, if that makes sense. It should never hold you back.
Right.
So,
And yeah, it won't hold you back, but it could definitely, if your self-image is bigger, you think you are better than you are, then it will then lead to negative outcomes and not what you want, and then you go back down and you don't want to go back down, but you need to
absolutely.
know that fine line of where you're at. But
Yep.
that's why we have drills and metrics and standards to test those, what your skills are.
Yeah. And I love metrics. Like metrics in shooting are one of my favorite things. It's one of the things that really drew me to USPSA because it had such a large pool of shooters. And I was like, oh, I can now measure myself against like a billion shooters in the world, or 30,000, but
Right.
still,
And climbing.
30. Exactly, exactly. Oh, okay. I want to know where I sit on this scale instead of, hey, I'm the best dude of the 5 dudes I know who shoot, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Well, you're lucky enough. You're in Arizona, so you have a lot of ranges near you that, or within a reasonable amount of distance. Like, because Arizona doesn't isn't Rio Salado in
Hmm.
Arizona,
Yep.
and every like that's like a mecca of shooting down there.
It certainly is. It is not uncommon for me to shoot a local regular weekend match and have at least one, if not multiple, world champions shooting the same match
Because you'll
at a
get
local.
Nils down there and Robbie Latham and
Hmm. Elias
Layton's down there.
Frangolis, Leighton's
Eli-
down here.
Yep, yeah, Elias Frangoulis. I don't know what it was. I was talking to somebody. I couldn't remember Elias's name. I'm just like, it's that guy who didn't get into IDPA Worlds, even though he was a world champion, because he didn't have enough points.
Yep. Yep. Good
And I
job,
think
IDPA.
I think he'd won Worlds the year before. Oh yeah, he was the classic division IPSC world champs in 17.
Yeah, yeah. And Elias is a great dude. You know, he's one of my favorite dudes in the sport for sure. Um, but yeah, just guys like that, not not uncommon to shoot against them on the weekends,
Hmm.
which is can be intimidating, for sure. But it's awesome because you know, it's not the same when you see a dude's match performance at like a major match or on video or anything. It's a lot different to have them right there and shoot the exact same thing you are shooting on the same day, same conditions, same everything. It's
Right.
pretty cool. It's pretty
With
cool.
almost similar gear, like because
Yeah.
Nils runs a production gun, Elias runs a classic, a single stack gun most of the time. I mean, it really tells you where you're at compared to the top of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of where you live in Arizona, well, in Arizona, it's because you're in Prescott. Is that where does it snow in
Correct.
Prescott?
It is currently snowing right now, actually.
Okay, so most of the time it's very good weather. Do you
Hmm.
have to worry about because in up in Michigan we have an off season essentially. How much of an off season do you get due to weather there, or is it shooting all year round? And if you get snowed on, oh well.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good question. So where I'm at, it very much is a we don't necessarily have an off season, uh, but there might be 2 or 3 days out of the year where you're not getting to the range because it
Mhm.
is snowed in, you know. And then we have what we call our monsoon season out here, which you know the last year we really didn't have it. The first year I moved out here, it was nuts. I mean, it opened up and it poured, and everything was a river. So those days are actually more of a concern than like snow days, because you do not want to shoot in that stuff. It is terrible. It's like the worst shooting at frostproof, but
Ugh.
without, yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible.
It
So
is. It is. I wouldn't think that'd be fun. I mean, I don't like to go out when it's less than like 40 degrees to shoot, but and that's just because of the dexterity in the hands. I mean, you just at that point there's no you're not going to get anything out of training through that. So
mhm.
it's well, I mean you do. I mean you understand your limits and being prepared for the cold, but I'm like I'm not going to break any ground here fighting the cold hands. So I'm like I'm going to go
Yeah,
home or not even go at all. Even though
yeah,
if it might have been the range day that was allotted for that time, that plan, I'm like I will scrap this for another day.
yep, yeah. The best you can hope for on days like that is to maintain your skill. That's
Hmm.
the best you can hope for, and you know, at worst, you're gonna actually do damage to your shooting, by practicing in that. And I get it, you know, train as you fight, blah 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 blah. Um, Listen, sucks.
Hmm.
That's just the way it is. So, uh, you know, there's no real skill progression there. And I really don't need, I don't need to practice sucking. Like I get it. Yep, this
Yep.
sucks. Okay, good.
I'm going
So,
home.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So,
Now, you're a trainer, a full-time gun builder.
yeah.
You still teach at Yavapaya?
I do. I teach at Yavapai College, in their gunsmithing program currently. Uh, Teaching custom pistol building for one semester, and then right now we're in our first year semester, so I'm
Hmm.
teaching all the first years about functionality and how pistols have evolved from the dawn of time and whatnot. So actually they start 1911s this week, so I get excited now.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, well, it's a whole gunsmithing school, correct? So it's not just like that's the that's just a part of it. That's the whole school, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's just so the pistol smithing is just the part of it.
Okay. It's not like like a college and then there's the sect that is the gunsmithing school. So it's okay to have guns at this school.
Well, no, it's a legit college. Like,
Right.
it just regular college. We just happen to have, like, we're shoved off in our own little corner on a different campus, and
Gotcha.
we yeah, it's cool to have guns there.
Right.
Uh, we you know
Kind of like when I took a semester of like a first responder class for a semester. It was okay to have certain other things there, like actual knives and things to cut people out of things. But oh no, if you go on campus and cut your apple with a goddamn pocket knife, you're getting talked to by security. No joke. This happened to me one semester. I'm like, I had to take, for some reason, to wrap up some credits I needed, I had to take like a first year history class, and I was cutting my damn apple, and somebody thought I was gonna hurt him because I'm cutting up an apple. You know, I had a little cutting board too. I'm like, I'm cutting a damn apple. So the next day, the security officer's like, you know, you can't have that. I'm like, what? That night, I'm like, I cut an apple. I was like, what? It's a weapon. I don't care. So I listened to him, put it away, and that was. I got irritated. Luckily enough, I haven't had to go back to main campus in a while. So
yeah, I avoid our main campus like the plague, which is really funny too, because even on our campus, right? It's like the main program at my campus is the gunsmithing program, but because of, you know, not to go down this rabbit hole, but because of certain policies, there are in fact no guns allowed signs posted at the gunsmithing school, which you have to kind of wonder if maybe we're taking the policy a little too literally, that we must have these signs displayed when it's a gunsmithing school.
Yeah, that's a little. That's. It was probably in the Start Your College starter pack. All these signs. But hey, I mean, it is what it is. But let's get away from that. And like you said, you're a formal trainer. I know you said you've taken a lot of training. Who has been the biggest class takeaway, like trainer takeaways from training you've taken, like instructors or classes?
Man, that's hard. So there are a couple that really are huge, right? I'll tell you right now, probably the first class that completely and utterly changed my perspective on shooting was Frank Proctor, old Frank Proctor class in like 2012, I think. It was like, and I'm not sure how Frank's classes are right now, but that class that I took, there were like 8 of us in the class, and then on day 2 that dropped to like 6 because someone had an emergency or something. So it was amazing, but it was like taking the class version of Brian Enos's Beyond Fundamentals book. Like if you turn that book into a class, that's what it was, and it was amazing. It changed my shooting completely. So that was a huge I guess moment, or I took a ton away from that class about performance shooting and efficiency, and you know, maybe a little different perspective on how things work, right? Especially, you know, it's Frank. His recoil mitigation is out of control, just absolutely out of control. So I learned a lot about that from him. The other that was huge was Mike Seeklander. And Mike's class, I ended up taking his competition handgun before I was even shooting competition. The big thing about Mike's class that I loved was just how he approached teaching. So I took a lot away from Mike's class about just teaching portion of things. You know, it was cool to see, you know, a dude like Mike, I think he was shooting a limited gun at the time, pull 1-second draws on a head box, like the credit card of the USPSA head box at 7 yards in 1 second. Like that was amazing to me. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that was cool. And then just the way he approached teaching, you know, and then I went out and bought his books and figured all that other stuff out. And, but that was a big one too. And then of course, you know, my buddy Scott Jedlinski, he was probably the first person I took a class with where my teaching style and the things I teach really meshed with, like, yes, this is how I do all these things too. This is amazing. And we were fast friends at that class anyways. And I mean, we teach together still today. But that was another one, and purely because we really just, there are other guys out there teaching the similar things and similar ways to how I was teaching. So that was a great one too. Um, really, those are the big ones. Those are probably the uh, three biggest life-changing classes for me. And I've taken some great classes just from some great teachers. Ken Hackathorn is an amazing teacher. He really is. I got so much out of not the techniques in his class, right? Nothing against what he's teaching, POI wise, but just to watch Ken teach was a great experience. So
That'd be even one I would love to just sit by, like not even take the class, but just sit there and watch the man do his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And all the knowledge that's wrapped in his brain from so many years.
Right.
It's just one of those things you'd love to sit down with him over a cup of coffee and just chat with. I mean, there's so many people like nowadays that fall into that category. You just like, I'd love to run into you in a coffee shop or somewhere, drink a cup of coffee and just sit down and bullshit, and you'd be there all day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly how it is with Ken. I'm a big shooting history buff. Like, I love the evolution of modern shooting. I just think it's amazing. And so you get those stories from Ken because he was there when it happened.
Right.
Kind of
Him
stuff.
and Bill and
Yep.
Jerry Barnhart and escaping me now. Todd Jarrett.
Oh yeah. Yep. And it's great. I love hearing those things.
Mm-hmm.
So
blast from the past.
Yep. Well, especially being a gunsmith, watching the evolution of the guns is just amazing to me too. When you see the first red dot on a handgun, right? Essentially, Jerry Barnhart in the 90s, and you're like, oh my gosh, this all of a sudden became a thing, right? And now here we are today with slide mounted red dots being so prominent. So it's cool. I think it's super cool to see that.
It is especially cool, especially even for them to see what's like. I was doing that years ago. Hurry up and get on my level, people.
Yep. Well, it's funny too. I've said this before. The greatest shooting videos I have ever seen / purchased, whatever, was Jerry Barnhart's Burner series. He filmed it in the 90s, early 90s. And it's like a 10 video series, right?
All on VHS, right?
Yep. Now I got the DVDs though. I'm super classy now.
Mm-hmm.
But it was amazing. Like, at the point when I bought those in my shooting, I wish I had bought them much sooner, because I was like, this is exactly how I do these things. Why did it take me 10 years to discover this when I could have watched this video and been like, oh, look, there it is. That's exactly what it took me 10 years to figure out. So still to this day, I think you can still get them. The best shooting video series I have ever seen. So
I might have to look that. I might have to see if I can get those DVDs then, because that'd be something. It's just like one of those things you like, even if you only watch it once, to have it as a collectible.
Yeah.
Just as to like, I have these, and as long as I have a computer or something to play them, and that's what you do is you rip it off the DVD, put it on a file on your computer, and then you have it forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yes, and all these guys you were talking about, Frank Proctor, Mike Seeklander, Jedi, they all competed, or they do compete, but they're all still self-defense oriented shooters as well. They're not just one side of the coin. And I think a lot of people, my audience is mostly probably competition, some self-defenders, or myself, who are in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think with more instructors like this who blend the middle more, we'll come together better. Because I've even had on the online internet is toxic. I mean, I have gone to online text arguments with even friends, people I consider friends of mine, about shooting, and because they don't like to hear that I say shooting
Mm-hmm.
is shooting. It's like tactics are a different thing,
Yep.
and I understand I play a game, but that's not all I do. And
Mm-hmm.
but like Proctor, Seeklander, Jedlinski, they do it both. I mean, Scott, like he said, he probably hasn't competed in a while, but he's the busiest instructor I've heard of in a while. Like, how many classes? Like, Beverly's got him working to death.
Yep.
But
Yep. 80,
got
85 classes this year. So,
man, yeah, it's insane. But I want more people to blend the middle. I want people to be on both sides, and we'll all get better if they.
absolutely. You know, and that's one of the things too, because I've always kind of, you know, when I was a tactical guy, and I first started shooting competition, I was like, oh man, this is really taking my shooting to another level. I don't know why people have been telling me this is going to get me killed for years and years and years. And then you talk to some of the uh, super tactical guys, the top level guys, and it's like, yeah, we all shoot USPSA. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, then that makes total sense now. Uh, you know, these instructors that walk both sides, uh, I think they are the most evolved,
Mhm.
I should say, because they can understand tactics are tactics, shooting is shooting, and y- y- there's nothing bad about being at the highest level of performance shooting wise versus, you know, oh, that's another great one. Mike Pannone gives a
Mhm.
great explanation of, you know, the difference between performance shooting and tactics and whatnot. He does a great shtick about it. But it's understanding that there competition will make you better. It
Mhm.
will 100%, you know, and all the top tactical guys, which everyone wants to imitate and be like, uh, they're all shooting competition too.
Mhm.
And there's very few guys at the top level of those organizations that are going to tell you, you know, shooting sports are bad. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
You know, they will say that there is context for what we do in a
Of
sport
course.
because it's a game. It's, I mean, it truly is.
Yep.
And but the applications of the game will, you know, they compound interest for everything you do because you get your draw, your reload, your transitions. You can manipulate the gun, and that in a stressed environment under, you know, pressure of time, not against really force on force, but
Hmm.
it, it's honestly, I would much rather go to a match than go shoot at a static range and burn paper all day. I
Sure.
mean, nothing wrong with going and burning a B8, you know, checking your 25-yard, you know, hat qual from Kyle DeFore, doing the 25-yard B8 in 10 to 15 seconds. Like, but I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with those metrics of doing those. But if that's all they're doing, there could be so much more. And
Hmm.
match pressure is the closest thing you can get to that kind of pressure besides force on force or actually being in a gunfight.
Sure. Sure. You know, and it's, don't get me wrong, it's different pressure. It's not the
Yeah.
same pressure.
Hmm.
Uh, but it has the reaction you are looking for, I promise you.
Hmm.
And no, it's not going to be the exact same. But it is pressure, and you are pressure testing things, and it's fantastic. You know, the thing about it is really like, you know, you mentioned Kyle's, you know, hat test qual, hat qual,
Hmm.
and some of the other things, even a match, right? So I view them going back to the metrics thing.
Hmm.
Matches are a test. Kyle's qual, right, is a
Hmm.
test. They should not be your practice,
Right.
right? Those are the things you do every once in a while. And I'm as guilty as anyone else of doing this. You know, oh, I'm going to run this test 10 times and that's going to be my practice session because it's going to give me, you know, 100 rounds or 300 rounds or whatever. But that doesn't necessarily make you better at shooting because you are focused on an outcome at that point.
Hmm.
You are not focused on the process of shooting, which is a great, you know, process versus outcome or process versus result. Tim Herron does probably the best explanation of that.
I love
Uh,
Timmy. Timmy's
yeah,
wonderful.
he's great, man. He's a good friend and a great teacher, great instructor, really, a great coach. And I can't say enough good things about Tim. So, and he's an amazing competitive shooter. So
Yeah, I am lucky enough. This will be in June, my second year of Tim. I'm going to take practical performance again because
nice.
I find that much worth it. I told him you need to increase your price though. You're giving me way too much. Well, when he spends 10 to 12 hours on the range that day, not including setup,
Hmm.
you're on the range for TD1 for 10 to 12 hours, and then you do it again the second day, you're getting so much training value and seepage from him that it's just like, dude, charging $400 for your 2-day class, you need to jack your prices up.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm glad he did. I have no problem paying the extra fee to have Tim for 3 whole days, because he's going to actually shoot a match with us after the class on the third
Nice.
day. So that'll be awesome. And seeing that level of caliber of shooter,
Hmm.
even though they might say it's a boomer gun and it's a competition gun, but he'll go grab a carry optics gun or a production gun and
Yep.
hose fest. I mean, when you get to that level, it doesn't really matter what your equipment is. I mean, getting familiar with that equipment, but he could, with maybe 100 rounds, get familiar with that gun and go be performing at the same level as he was with his super competition gun.
Sure. Absolutely. I want to circle back to that in a
Mm-hmm.
second, but luckily, I'm going to do a shameless plug here, real quick.
Go right ahead. Mm-hmm.
Tim and I are actually teaching a joint class at the end of April, which I'm super excited about. Um,
See, I wish I lived closer because I would go to that.
yeah, it's going to be great. What we did was I used to have a class called How to Practice, right? It was our How to Practice workshop, 1 day workshop, and it was literally how to structure and get the most out of your practice sessions, right? Because if you're like me, you can waste a lot of your life practicing completely wrong and not getting any better. Uh, and trying to figure out how to get better is you plateau and you don't know how to get out of it. So that's what this class is really about. Like, do these things this way. All these things work on these certain skills and tasks. And here's why it works. And here's how you can structure your own for whatever your intended purpose is, defensive, competition, just performance, whatever you're doing. These things will make it better. So, Tim and I were talking about that one day, and I just simply said, you know what, dude, we should just do the how to practice class as a joint thing. And he was all about it. We changed a couple of little things, but so we're going to end up teaching that at the end of this month here in Prescott, and then Tim will teach his 2 day class after that. So it's going to be amazing, and I'm super looking forward to it. So
And besides having Tim come up, I'm super excited. I want another stab at the barrel drill. It's something I never practice or
yep.
even set up in dry fire, but it's like, I want to go for the barrel. That is so hard.
It's deceivingly difficult. It
Mm-hmm.
absolutely is deceivingly difficult.
It's
Uh,
very, but it's simple at the same time. It's weird because
yeah,
it's not unobtainable, because anyone can truly obtain it, depending on how they go through it. But I'm not gonna give it away. But it it messes with your brain a little bit.
it certainly does. I watched. So the first time he ran it, at least when I was in a class, was up here last year, and he had just done it. Just opened up this barrel drill patch. I had seen the drill before because he and I had talked about it, but it was the first time like I had seen it in an actual class. And we had multiple masters and grandmasters in the class up here, all of which did not did not make it. So there is a technique to it, to getting that drill down or that test down for sure.
And
Uh,
so you got your patch in, was it 2019 or 2020?
what was last year? 2020. I think
Okay.
May of 2020, which was patch number 2.
Right.
So,
And like you had what? Wasn't Raul was in that class, wasn't he?
yep.
And Leighton
Yep.
and John and Neil from
Hmm.
ASP. I mean, that was, and I was excited because that video series came out before Tim came in June. So it
Uh-huh.
got me even more pumped. And I like that. And I love that Tim sets up his practice stages completely different wherever he's at, depending on
Hmm.
the bay size or whatever. So it's not like Steve, I know Steve, and he sets the same. Steve
Yep.
Anderson sets up the same class drill, well, the class stage, and I love that Tim makes a completely different stage every class.
Yeah.
But they all have the same principles of teaching within them. So,
Hmm.
and which is I'm excited for, is because it doesn't matter how many times you take a class from somebody, it's always can be different, or
Sure.
what you can gain out of it. Like for me, this will be the second time taking this class, but I feel the first time you ever take a class, I have this the nervous jitters of,
Yeah.
meeting like an idol slash mentor to you before, that's how I felt with Steve as well. Like big Steve Fisher, tall as can be, and a big dude, you meet him in person. He's one of the nicest guys you can ever meet, just like Tim. But I'm glad Tim's shorter than I am, because I've never met somebody shorter than me. I'm only 5'7".
So am I.
Yep. But Timmy's a little shorter than me. It's like, okay, I don't feel so nervous, but Tim's reputation behind him, and his pedigree of shooting. It's just like
Mhm.
it puts you not unease, but it's like you want to perform well, but it's also like the weird heart jitters or whatever. But the second time, hopefully, I will feel a little more relaxed and I'll perform better. I wouldn't say my ego got in the way of that class, but I wasn't performing at 100% match capability at that class because of some uneasiness and the nervous jitters. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
fights those, but
Yep. All the time. All the time. Which is why it's so important to put yourself in those stressors
mm-hmm.
often. You know, I have a buddy. His name's Seth. He's a grandmaster in carry optics. And he teaches with me fairly regularly, and he stepped away from shooting matches for a while, right? A couple weeks, 3 weeks, and came back, started shooting a match together, and he mentioned it immediately how nervous he was, how much more nervous he was now than he would have been 3 weeks ago, simply because he had not shot a match in those 3 weeks. And the stress, it's a social stress, but how much that stress affected him just from taking, a few week break of inoculation. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's very interesting.
and you and Seth have a podcast that you haven't uploaded in a while, but I have listened to the whole back catalog, and that
Oh,
was
good.
the Practicast with I can hear it now in my voice, Seth talking in my back of my brain. But guys, go check out the Practicast. I know that AJ will maybe put something up. I don't know.
Yeah. Actually,
Eventually.
the show I've been trying to get up, but I've been having some technical issues, is actually an interview with Tim from last year. So yeah,
Yep.
I was trying to get it out before the first of the year, and for some reason, my computer doesn't like me, and I can't figure out why. So we're working on it. I
Right.
promise we're working on it, because Jay Beal
Mm-hmm.
even reached out. He's like, are you going to do this? And I was like, I promise it's coming. I just don't know why it doesn't work.
Yeah, and honestly, Jay's been one of my biggest pushers to strive for better, getting. Jay and I are the same age, but Jay is
Okay.
like, we're fairly young, so, but he's so up at the top of the game already, and it's just like he just motivates me to get better. Besides my
Mm-hmm.
own drive and passion, like I've got the rage to master, I call it.
Sure.
I'm like, I want to get better and I want to be the best I can be, but he's just another push to get better, and he's such a great person.
He is. He is. I really like Jay. I have very limited interactions with him, but they've always been positive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Yep, that goat farmer from Maine who will why he's kicking your butt. Go listen to that
that's
episode
right.
of of Jedi's podcast.
Yep.
That was a good episode too. God, This guy is talking to a bunch of good people, and I get to talk to you guys now, which is awesome. But I need, well, we know because you're a custom 2011 builder.
Mm-hmm.
What are you carrying nowadays? Is it the 2011? Is it a 1911? Is it a double
Sure.
stack 1911? Whatever. And I don't know the differences between double stack 1911 and a 2011, but everyone calls them a 2011. And
Yeah, so let me address that first, right?
Mhm.
So here's the deal. Uh, for the since the 80s, right? Not really the 80s, but since STI built a gun that had 2011 on the side of it, people have pretty much referred to double stack 1911s as 2011s, especially if they utilized an STI style magazine, right? Or an STI print magazine. Then a couple years ago, STI went and trademarked 2011. So after that, they sent out some less than nice letters that may have included cease and desist that says stop calling your stuff 2011s because they're not STIs. Okay, got it. So that's when people just finally started saying, at least in common language, double stack 1911s.
Mhm.
Um, I still call them 2011s pretty regularly because then people know what you're talking about.
Right.
Because there are multiple styles of uh, double stack 1911s, but the most prominent is the STI style. Um, so, what am I carrying currently? Actually, currently I'm carrying a single stack 1911. Uh, Surprisingly, it's a stainless gun, which I despise stainless guns, but this one I love.
Mhm. I'm
So
assuming you built it.
I did. I
Mhm.
did. Actually, I built it along as a demo gun for my college students. So in their second semester, they build a 1911 from scratch, and as part of that program, I build the gun along with them. So I will say, okay, today we're going to learn how to fit a slide to frame. I did the slide to frame fit on this gun yesterday. It took me this many hours. If it takes me this many hours, it should take you roughly this many hours.
Now,
Uh,
for example, is that like, say it takes you, I don't know, maybe 4 hours to fit a barrel, or I mean, a slide to
sure.
frame? Would you say it'd take them 6 to 8 then?
Yep. That's
Okay.
pretty much exactly how I do it. For
Okay.
your first one, the first time you do anything gun building wise, you are far more cautious than you probably need to be. Um, it's one of those things, 90% of what you're doing can be hogging material, but that last 10% is critical.
Hmm.
You don't know that when you first start off. So you do the entire 100% super careful because you're like, I don't want to overshoot this. And that's what takes so long.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. And so you built this night is it in 45 or is it a 9 mil?
nope, it's a 9 mil single stack. It's built off of a Nighthawk frame. Actually, I used to have I still have a really good relationship with Nighthawk, but that one's built off a Nighthawk frame. It's got a red dot on it. Um,
Has that
yep,
got the chambers plate on it then, or is that?
it it does not. This is actually it predates the Chambers plate
Mhm.
by a fair bit. It has the Trijicon plate on it,
Okay.
and currently it's sporting an RMR.
Okay.
So.
Are you of the one MOA train like Scott is?
Okay, so Scott's on the one MOA train because of this guy, but
Okay. Just make okay.
no, no. So here's the deal, right? I was very much all about that one MOA life,
Hmm.
very much about it until probably I don't know a year ago. Um, I really started experimenting with different dot sizes, right? So the one MOA really called to me because I was like, all the precisions, bro,
Hmm.
all of it, right? And I could do amazing things with the one MOA dot, uh, hundreds on 25-yard B8s was not uncommon, right?
Hmm.
Because the gun was more than capable. And now that I've got an ultra refined aiming point and everything like that, I'm like, psh, 100 all day long, bro. Let's see if we can do that weekend only.
Right,
Uh,
10x's.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Uh, but I, I had experience with a 3.25 minute dot. I shot a lot of 2 minute dots because Hollow Suns and
Hmm.
Delta points. Um, but I didn't have a lot of experience with like 6.5 minute dots. So
Hmm.
I thought, you know what? I'm going to throw a 6.5 minute dot on my gun and just play around. Hated it immediately. Um, it was just way too big for what I wanted to do, especially for refined shooting. Um, that being said, when I went and put my 1 minute dot back on the gun, uh, I I realized that it was much more difficult to track, which I expected, right? Track in recoil.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought, I'm gonna put my 3 minute or 3.25 minute dot back on my gun, kind of the halfway in between spot, and really see if I can maximize like the speed of my 6.5 minute dot, especially on transitions, with the precision of my 1 minute dot. And that's kind of where I fell. I really enjoy the 2 minutes and the 3.25 minute dots. They are my preferred go-to for sure.
I would say so as well. At least on my RMRs, I've played with the 6.5 and the ones. I cannot pick up a 1 MOA to save my life, really, because
Mm,
it's so tiny. My astigmatism, it messes with them a little bit, but so much in recoil, like just like trying to find it, especially like on a washed out background, you're
mhm.
like, okay, like on a red, like a sandy red berm, you're
Sure.
like, where are you? That's maybe where green would come into play, but I mean, only Hollow Sun makes green dots, and for the
Yep.
most part, unless you want an auto adjusting RMR with the
You
with the
don't.
tritium. No, you don't.
You
You
don't.
just you don't. But they make. Do they still make them? I don't know.
I don't
But
know.
because then they have purple too, which is really weird. But
I did
so
not know
the
that.
they I just couldn't track the ones very well. So I stuck
Sure.
with the 3.25 on Scott's recommendation when I got into RDS pistols.
Mhm.
Now I have a competition gun. My slide's finally coming back from the milled from getting milled. I put a 5 MOA SRO on it.
Okay. Sure.
And because when I compared the SRO to my RMR, the 5 wasn't that much bigger, but I I know I didn't want a 1 and I didn't know how I felt about a 2.5, but I tried the 5 and I went with a 5 and I shot a 5. It's not much different. So,
Sure.
the nice thing is it can be dimmer than an RMR because of how much bigger the dot is for me.
Yeah. Yep.
And I
Yeah.
mean, dot preference is dot preference. I know people who love the 1. My eyes personally can't pick it up.
Sure. Sure. Exactly. And that's the thing. There are certain applications I really don't think uh, bigger dots are better. There are
Hmm.
certain applications where bigger dots are much better.
Yeah.
Um, Precision wise, the big dots fail. They
Hmm.
just do. But then again, what's precision for you? Are you trying to hit an A zone at 25 yards or are you trying to hit the X ring at 25 yards?
Right.
There's a huge difference there.
Right. Or you trying to
Um,
hit someone's, the head box at on a hostage target, or in life or death situations, there's dot
mhm.
size matters, but it's also putting the time behind the dot and knowing your capabilities and what you need to do with that done. You just
Yep.
can't, and a whole bunch of different grip pressures, trigger presses, sights, and
hmm
so many things about, what that your dot size is part of the equation too.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And I will say this, right? All those other things are probably more important than the size dot you're shooting.
Hmm.
But when you get the other stuff squared away, that's when your dot size is really going to come into play.
Hmm.
Um, that's that's just one of the things.
Right. And I know there's competition shooters, many open guns that are like 8 to 12 MOA
Sure.
dots. And they're ringing 25, 30 yard steel and whatever,
Mhm.
whatever they're, I don't know what Christian's use. No, he's using a max dot, so that's a smaller dot. But the RTS 2s that were huge dots, I
Sure.
mean, people using whatever they got. And it's
All
not
right.
uncommon, but it's not. a big dot is not the best application for a long shot self-defense shooting, I would assume. It all depends on the shooter.
Yeah. I would say it depends on the shooter, but once you get over 6.5 minutes, I think you're not in great territory.
Right. Yeah. I think it's been a while since I've looked through a 6.5 dot RMR. It probably takes up a lot of the window.
I think it does.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it occludes a lot of things.
Yeah.
So that was my biggest dislike of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Now we know you like dots on guns.
Mm-hmm.
You build 2011s, 1911s. You're a single stack master.
I am.
If I'm not, are you still sticking with single stack? You've been dabbling with limited, maybe even open, I think.
Yeah, so that's funny because all of my I have shot open, a fair bit of open, all with my carry gun.
Before they change the rules, everybody.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So at the time, when I shot open, so if anyone's like hooked up to the USPSA system, they're like, I'm gonna look this guy's classifiers up. You can look at my open classifiers. They are all shot from concealment AIWB because that was the division I could shoot a single stack from AIWB in, with a dot. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So with a dot on it. So yeah, pretty much all my open scores are with either a single stack gun or a 2011, but they're all with my carry guns from AIWB. So that's my open experience, right? Other than building like an open gun and test firing it and stuff like that. But I shot limited early on in my shooting career, I guess, competition career, purely because where's the most heat? Okay, it's limited division or open division. Well, I couldn't afford an open gun, and I wasn't a gunsmith at the time, so I was like, all right, I have this, STI in 40. I can get away with that.
At least it was in major power factor, at least.
That's right. That's right. Which is funny because the only reason I even had 40 guns was carryover from my very, very early tactical days. And at one point, a place I was teaching for only provided 40 caliber ammunition for instructors. So I was like, well, I got 40s. So, yeah, but that's really the only reason I even had that gun. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I got a big old Dawson Magwell on it and stuff like that. And I shot that for a while in limited. And I quickly left that. I shot some production for a while back when I shot M&Ps pretty exclusively. Now I shot, I think all the matches I shot last year were single stack. I just love single stack division, honestly. And I don't foresee myself leaving single stack division unless I'm going to be shooting like carry gear. Because with all the rule changes, I still can't shoot my carry gun in any other division but open. But
yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I want to ask, would you change carry optics to allow single action only guns?
100% I would. 100% I would. I don't see any. Listen, here's the reality, right? An M&P is a single action gun, despite what. Yes, it utilizes a striker, but the sear system is still a single action sear system.
Because it's pre-cocked, isn't it?
Correct. Okay. Correct. And it just like on, a 1911, the sear moves out of the way to, instead of releasing a hammer, it releases a striker, right? So if anything, it's a disadvantage to have a legit single action like 1911 or 2011 gun. But USPSA says no. For now.
Because I agree with you. I agree with you. They should be allowed. I don't believe on compensators yet in carry optics. It would make it a little too close to open. And I was okay with single action only guns. I don't care what people shoot necessarily. I'll shoot what I want to shoot or what I have. If you want to go buy and spend $5,000 on guns, go right ahead. I mean, you do you. I do me. but I want to get most people into the sport, but I still believe in having rules for competitive equity. I even had a conversation with your co-host Seth. I made a meme post, it was like, what do we want? Minor, open minor. And we got into a discussion. I'm like, competitive equity, it's all got to be fair. We got to be able to let production guys do what they got to do and open guys do what they got to do. But as soon as the equal playing field is gone for everybody, what do we have? It's not.
Yeah. Well, and that's honestly my, not that I'm complaining, but my largest complaint with USPSA right now is production division. Honestly, production division is not production division anymore. It's
almost limited minor.
Limited minor, exactly. Yeah. Oh, you can't have a magwell, cool, but I can have literally everything else. So what's the benefit? I can no longer go buy a Glock 17 or 34 and be super competitive day one first match in production division, which I thought was the greatest pull because anyone could shoot, an off the rack gun in production and be competitive.
You'd still have to buy more if you bought a Glock, you'd still have to buy 2 more mags though, unfortunately. Because you need a tillion mags.
Yeah. But still.
Right. And I honestly, I'd probably agree with you. If we hosed production as it is now, just scrap the division or something like that, I mean, yes, there's the appeal for the low cap 10 rounds, which is fine. But it's not the purest thing that it used to be of production. Now, it's so much like limited for limited minor. It kind of just needs to be revamped or absorbed into another division because honestly, most people start in limited minor because they only have 3 mags and they get to fill them up. I mean, and that's how most people shoot their first match.
Sure. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay.
Like, I agree. The organization could have done better with these rule changes though, and tested these first, or, give us 3 months of 3 months of testing or whatever to see if these changes are going to stick or not before, we're just going to make a live rule change.
Yeah. I understand from a management standpoint why the rules are beneficial, right? Because now I don't have to weigh your production gun because there ain't a production gun out there that weighs over 54 ounces or 59 ounces or whatever it is now. Yet.
I wouldn't want a 59-ounce gun. Like, open guns are like 40 to 45. Like, they're not that heavy.
Nope. And honestly, you got to kind of work to make a gun 50 some ounces. It's work.
All the brass and tungsten.
That's right.
So when is someone going to ask you to build a tungsten framed double stack 1911?
I don't know, but no, I won't.
It's not worth it.
Not gonna happen. Yeah. I mean, tungsten has its place. You get into dissimilar metals and all sorts of other stuff, and it sounds like a really good idea, but in the end, it'll be really bad for your gun. So
could even tungsten be hardened and annealed enough to actually be a frame?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Absolutely. The biggest thing is depending on what your slide's made out of, you're just going to eat your slide to frame fit away immediately, essentially.
Right.
So you would have to do some serious hardening on that slide in order to get it to work.
Yeah. Or I guess unless you really want to go tungsten on tungsten. I mean, God, that thing would be like, fuck that thing.
Yeah.
That would, I mean, people pick the wrong carry gun and like, oh, I'm not going to carry today. It's inconvenient. That thing would be like, why did I make this thing?
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's like, it's like anything. And I tell my students this a lot too, my gunsmithing students, some of them are building some very interesting things. Nothing I would ever build. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? Someone out there will pay you for this.
Hmm.
Someone out there wants this. And that's the way it is. I mean, not to mention the company's name, but there's a gun company out there that built a gun out of a meteorite, and
Hmm.
people paid a lot of money for it.
That's when they have more money than brains. But
Yep. Yep.
that's people can spend their money on what they want, and
That's
it's
right.
okay with me. As long
Yep.
if they give you money for a gun, all right. I'm like, I'll tell you what I'll build, but I mean, you can
Yeah.
kind of check some boxes, but I still tell you, oh hell no.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Unless you write me that blank check. Now you could write a blank check to AJ, and it might be done.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
But so yeah, I'm kind of really excited to see how that Tim Harrinan class goes for you guys, the joint class. It sounds really cool. Like I said, I would go take it if I was in the Prescott, Arizona area,
Hmm.
but it's a long drive or a fly down there.
It is. It definitely is.
And especially with how ammo is and whatnot, it's like it's crazy. I'm hoping ammo comes back a little bit more available this year so that people can shoot and train just a little bit. Like it doesn't have to be 2019 or 2019 prices, but obtainable. If I could find a couple thousand primers, not
Yeah.
even 10,000 primers, just a couple thousand. Be like,
Yeah.
I got powder and bullet. I got powder cases and bullets. I don't.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing, right? I was talking to Tim the other day. I've essentially got enough components to get me through this season. And if primers don't come back before this season's over, my competitive career will probably not exist next season.
Hmm.
So, which is unfortunate that we've gotten to that. But, I normally keep 2 seasons on hand, and I've already burned one full season, and this will be the second. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
we'll see. I mean, it might not be the best primers coming in, but if you can at least get some primers, I mean, you might have to respring the guns a little bit, but if they ignite primers, they ignite primers.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, here's one of my favorite questions. And what got you into teaching and why do you keep teaching?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll tell you right now, why do I keep teaching? I love teaching. I love it. I love watching people learn, and I love watching people discover things on their own. I just think it's the most amazing thing ever.
Where they have that aha moment, like that
Yeah.
everything ignites and you're like, I could have been doing this all along.
Yep. Yep. And it's even better, you get a student that they're struggling, right? They are struggling and they don't know why. And then that happens. And it's like the greatest thing ever. Whether it's, guided self-discovery where you just lead them down the path and they discover it there for themselves, or you simply tell them like, try this right now. And they do it and they just amazing. It's wonderful to me.
Hmm.
And that's with all things. I love teaching all around. It doesn't really, I love teaching shooting more
Hmm.
than anything, but I just love teaching. Um, how I got into teaching uh, is kind of interesting. So when I was in college, I was part of this uh, what was called Mountain Cold Weather Company. It was based around modern mountain warfare and mountain technical rescue and stuff like that. But one of the requirements to be a senior member in that company was you had to teach. You had to do classes, right?
Hmm.
It's military based. You have to teach. Uh, and I found that while I was doing that, I kind of had a gift for it. And I really enjoyed it, teaching all sorts of teaching technical rescue, teaching ropes, knots, skiing, stuff like that, all sorts of stuff. Um, but I super enjoyed it. And then being in the military, uh, you have to be able to teach, or you should be able to teach, especially if you're in a leadership position. So I did some of that, and actually the last job before I left the military, we were talking about where I was going to go next for my if I had stayed. where I was going to go. And obviously, I wanted to go to the schoolhouse. I wanted to go teach. And my battalion commander was very much about it. And he's like, okay, this is what I'd like to see you do. I'm going to want to send you here and be an instructor. I was like, great. And then I ended up getting out of the Army anyways, for other reasons that it was time for me to go.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then, right after I got out, I got immediately into executive protection, and I went to an executive protection course. And before I got out of the course, they offered me a chance to teach for them. They said, "What would you think of being, one of our full-time firearms instructors?" Or they had an apprenticeship program or something, and I was like, "Yeah, love to. Let's do it." And that's when I started teaching firearms. Was at that place, and I taught there for several years, to the point where I was the lead firearms instructor for their private security detail program. And I had opened up my own shop teaching at the time. I was teaching mostly just open enrollment, but it was pretty much all military and law enforcement guys in the open enrollment classes. And it was very, very, very different than the things I teach today. You know, kind of the evolution of learning on my own learning really shaped that. So now I teach primarily performance-based shooting,
Mm-hmm.
which I love so much more, so much
Mm-hmm.
more. So yeah, that's kind of where it started and kind of where it's taken to me. Again, that would be kind of a recurring thing for me, would be taking a class and then end up teaching that class later on.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing happened. That's how I ended up teaching at the gunsmithing program. I was in my last semester, uh, and the department head approached me and said, "How'd you like to teach for this program?" And I said, "You betcha." So I guess I'm staying in Prescott.
Right.
So yeah, so that's how it happened.
Now, I love sharing information with everybody, and I kind of have I love to give back. So how would you recommend someone like wanting to start to teach? Maybe even just like a couple people here and there, dabble in teaching, not necessarily go on to full time, even part time instruction locally, but someone trying to help people as best they can in a training situation.
Sure. So the first thing you have to do is I would say teach your friends. Get a
Hmm.
couple of your friends, teach your friends what you know. Um, the thing about it is, for me, being a teacher, you have got to expand your knowledge base as much as you possibly can. You need to see it all, try it all, and form actual, like, opinions based in testing, right?
Hmm.
You need to try these things. Why do I not teach certain things? Because I've done them. I've tried them. I've shot, you know, why do I tell guys, no tactical turtle, here's why. It's not based in theory, I promise you. I
Hmm.
shot like that for years. I thought I was going to have to give up shooting because of my elbows, because I could not make it through more than about 100 rounds without my elbows hurting real bad. Now, today, I shoot a 1911 and 45 at a 175 power factor. I can shoot 1,000 rounds in one practice session and not have any elbow pain,
Hmm.
right? Purely based on the things I learned about shooting, about my stance, about my grip, about everything to do with shooting. Um, so you need to experiment with all these things. You need to learn. You need to be a student of your craft, and then you need to start teaching your friends. Right?
Hmm.
Here's the funny thing about falling into teaching. Right? If you expand your knowledge base, if you gain a ton of experience, your friends and individuals will just start coming to you asking you about these things.
Mhm.
And without realizing it, you will be teaching. Um, at least that's been my observation. And that, I mean, teachers can't help but teach, and it doesn't matter what they do. They're going to end up teaching.
Mhm.
So,
That's a good way of putting it. Falling into teaching.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
No, and that's awesome. And like I said, I've helped a few people out here and there, but it's like try to building your craft as best you can to make it everyone get a little bit better and having the factual whys, not just because Scott Jedlinski said so. It's, well, I
yep,
tried that and I agree with him because of X, Y, and Z, you know, and
mm,
and I think a lot of people will name drop without, and say they do this because of this. Well, why do you say that? Well, because he said so. Well, that's not a valid answer anymore.
right,
You need, like, I mean, I in a video, or if not, I'll credit whoever I learned that from and why. Because, and that's a big thing too, is I find important is if I'm going to say, if I'm going to, I know Ernest Langdon says it, Scott says it, the best teachers are the best thieves, but
mm-hmm,
they at least give the credit where the credit is due. And, they have the metrics of why it works as well. And it's,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It's funny because you mentioned Raul earlier. Raul
Mhm.
was over here the other day, and we were having a similar conversation about how far back do we track the lineage of the technique or the drill we're doing. Because I used to spend hours upon hours trying to find out who's the first one that put this drill out there in the open or this technique out there in the open and get it from the original source kind of thing, you
Mhm.
know? Um, but I would encourage guys that are considering teaching or want to be teachers. That's a great place to start. Build that knowledge base. Take what you want or take what you think is good, throw the other stuff away, but know why you're taking it and why it works because you have the experience base of doing it and know why the other stuff maybe doesn't work uh, for you or for a certain individual. Because here's the thing, the things I used to say this a lot when the term training scars was very big. Oh, you're
Mhm.
gonna you're gonna give yourself training scars. You know,
Mhm.
one dude's training scar is another dude's performance gain.
Mhm.
And that's really, you know, the tactical community, nothing against the tactical community, but as a, they would throw everything out. If you didn't do it my way, that's a training scar. You're going to get yourself killed. That's a training scar. And it's like, no, it's really not a training scar. It's an evolution past what you're teaching, but you don't understand it or you can't do it. Therefore, it's a training scar to you.
Mhm.
Um, so I nowadays I really despise that training scar idea
Mhm.
because really, you know, what I think is the biggest training scar in the world might be the biggest performance gain for you that you've ever had.
Mhm.
So,
I think my biggest training scar was the pinning and resetting, and that is, but and it's funny because I reached out. You did a video with Neil,
yes,
and I reached out to you about it because I'm like, and it's worked so far. I mean,
yeah,
the limited dry fire I've been able to do since then is,
mm-hmm,
here or there, but at least in dry fire, it's been effective. So we're gonna have to,
good.
as soon as as soon as some things come back. I'm waiting on my slide to come back before I go and have a range session because instead of making two trips, we'll make one trip here. Make the best out of go zero gun, do some training and
Yep,
chrono. But I mean, that was my biggest training scar, and
sure.
I wish people didn't teach it in the beginning because that's where it's like one of those things people say, oh, we pin and reset to teach people what a reset is, and it's like if we didn't teach that, we wouldn't have these issues later down on the road.
Yep, yep. Well, again, and here comes, part of that learn everything you can.
Mm-hmm.
Learn why we actually why people teach people to pin and reset,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, for if you're a history of like Ron Avery, right?
Hmm.
Ron Avery and Mike Seeklander, in fact, uh, both were big proponents of prep and press. They used different names for it as far as a trigger pull, but you would prep to the wall and then press through the shot, right? Understanding reset there has some applicability. However, However, the drill we utilize for that, the pin and reset drill, or pin and flip, as some guys called it, or a bunch of different names for it, uh, I think you're right. It does far more of a disservice to a new shooter or any shooter than there is anything to be gained from it. Even with prep and press,
Hmm.
it doesn't help.
And I think Tim explained it really well when I was in class with him about not doing the pin and reset. Get that finger, just get it out of there. You don't need it. You're waiting. You're letting the gun tell you when you can shoot, and you do not want the gun telling you when you shoot. You need to tell the gun it's time to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and
And
it's funny.
honest,
Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, one of the biggest, every now and again, you hear a shooter talk about, well, I can outrun my gun. And it's like, well, not really. You're not outrunning that gun at all. What you're doing is you've set limitations into your shooting that makes you now wait on the gun because of things you're doing. You're not really outrunning the gun. You are forcing the gun to be delayed, like pinning and resetting the trigger. And
Hmm.
that's why you're outrunning your gun. You're really not.
Right, because I think like an open gun cycles at 0.08, or something like that. Like, it's very hard to see someone have splits that fast to outrun a gun.
Yeah.
Like, maybe your perception, you're waiting on the gun, but there's no way you're outrunning a gun. Like,
Yeah, it's not happening.
it's not.
Um,
I mean,
you,
you're not. You can't even perceive it that fast. I mean,
exactly. I mean, and it's even for guys, now like you and like me, that we reset under recoil, as
hmm.
guys have liked to set it, right? Which is
Hmm.
basically just let the gun reset. Watch it in slow mo. Press that trigger as fast as you can, and watch when you actually come off that trigger or get past that reset point. The gun has already cycled. The
Hmm.
slide is already back far before you ever even get your finger close to coming off of that. And
Hmm.
that's with you knowing it's going to happen, right? So
Yeah.
you don't need to build in this any delay to that. You are waiting on the gun. Don't lie to yourself. You're waiting. Or I'm sorry, the gun is waiting on you. Don't lie to yourself about that.
Right.
It's ready
And
to shoot far before you are.
it's funny because, like, you were, James Ager just put out a video about Jedi's instructor class. And
Hmm.
I remember the part where Jedi's like, when you guys were zeroing, all I heard was this pinning and clicking shit. But when you're going fast, you don't hear it because you're not doing it. And
Yep.
I was really bad about that in zeroing process, thinking, oh, got to zero this red dot perfectly. But,
Hmm.
just let it go out. The bullet's already gone. It doesn't matter, it's like the bullet's already gone. You don't need to worry about fucking up the impact of the bullet.
Right. Right. And even, still guys, especially precision rifle shooters
Hmm.
will talk about that. That's the first time I had ever heard about pinning the trigger and doing it because you're gonna disturb the sights before the round leaves the barrel. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And then you put some like actual critical thinking to that, and you're like, no, you're not. But the first time I had heard that was, in a precision rifle course, and when you apply some critical thinking to that, it's like, no, that's not. If you are moving that gun, it's happening before the round is actually fired, and it's continuing through that firing cycle. It's not happening, and this is the biggest thing, with the whole anticipation thing. Or what I prefer is pre-ignition push.
Hmm.
um, it is happening before the shot is fired. It's not happening after the sear releases and before the bullet leaves the chamber. That doesn't happen. We're not fast enough for that. Um, so yeah.
But even like precision rifles, they like weigh 22, 25 pounds. Literally, fun fact, my neighbor next door to me to the south is a PRS shooter.
Mhm.
And he's like, my gun's like, his gun is like 25 pounds. I'm like, there's no way my little finger can push the muzzle of the gun in any direction to mess up trajectory of that bullet at even 100 yards, 500 yards, 1,000 yards. And it's
Yep.
like, there's no way when for pistols, the gun weighs only a couple pounds and the trigger is 5 pounds of force to be pushed back. Sure. Yeah, that's a lot more of your finger
Mm-hmm.
affecting accuracy. But when a gun weighs that much weight, there's no way that your finger can outmaneuver the gun when it weighs that much.
Right. Right. And it's, don't get me wrong, because I don't side with everyone where trigger press isn't important. Trigger press is important when you need it to be important. Your support hand is far more important. Your grip with the support hand is way more important than how you press the trigger. But if you can press a good trigger and your support hand's doing what it needs and you're seeing the sights the way they're supposed to be seen, dude, there's nothing you can't do.
Exactly.
Right?
And that was going to be my next question. A couple weeks ago now, I saw, a big Instagram famous shooter who owns a holster company talk about how, trigger press was absolute 100% the end all be all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you saw a lot of people are like, well, sure, you make an okay point, but what about your other hand? Like that thing, like I get the quote from Steve and Tim, I can slap that trigger like it owes me money, but if with my solid support hand grip at whatever distance we've determined, as long as, I can slap it like it owes me money and still get acceptable shots on target.
100%.
Now if it's at 25, I need to have better trigger control than at 7 or 3. Just like, there's context to everything, but, I don't need to have this super precise trigger pull at 3 yards. I can slap it. Like if my grip is accurate, is efficient and my sights are on target. Honestly, with a red dot, you still don't even need sights at 3 yards. You kind of just not point.
You don't
your
need
index.
it with iron sights either, but
right.
That's a secret.
Right. Well, and that's what a lot of people do. They'll index the gun like, you have high level of skill at 3 to 5 yards. Long as your gun is aimed somewhere at that target, like a line generally, you pull the trigger with your good grip, you're going to get 2 A's or an Alpha Charlie and be good.
Sure.
And it's not like you need to align the front sight, put it in the notch, align it with the target. No, it's just like, all right, we're there. Boom, boom, moving on.
Yep. Absolutely.
Now, do you have any matches you're looking forward to this year?
Yeah. So, couple of matches I'm definitely looking forward to. Single stack nationals, of course, I'm looking forward to. Last year I finished 30th overall last year. Which for my first nationals, I was super happy with. This year, yeah, I was super happy. Because you always hear, listen, you're going to suck at your first nationals. And I was like, go in there, don't suck, just shoot your game, don't get wrapped up in it. And I did. And, I had there was definitely room for improvement there. Mm-hmm. But I had an okay match for sure. I was happy when I walked out like, all right, I did good on certain things. There were certain things I definitely need to clean up, but I'm happy. And I ended up finishing 30th. This year, this might be stretching a little bit, but I would love to finish top 20 or top 16.
Oh, I could say you could do top 16 for sure.
Well, thank you. I hope so.
Just make sure you rub the Tim juice, because Tim's gonna win. Tim's gonna just like
that's right.
Tim.
I'm waiting for it. One of these days, I have no doubt Tim is going to win single stack nationals.
I think with how Area 1 and Area 2 went in 2020 for him, so late in the season, they're gonna push him to national. Long as he can get his training time in for himself, besides teaching, I have no doubt in my mind Tim can be a national single stack champion this year.
100%. 100%. Now, the one thing Tim does have coming up, though, too, is World Shoot, which
at the end there, yeah.
Yep, end of the year, and if it happens, that'll be with a minor gun, so that'll be interesting to make that switch because it is a little different shooting a minor gun.
Yep, because you got 10 rounds instead of we have 10 rounds instead of 8 or 9 really, but So he's gonna shoot a single stack. He's gonna shoot a 9mm for Worlds.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ooh.
because IPSC. That's the name of the game.
And it's gonna be
Yeah.
so hard to get ammunition over there if he's got, like, no,
Yeah.
thank you. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I would love, like I said, I really want to finish top 16, top 20 this year at nationals. Uh, I would love to someday win, some serious single stack matches.
mhm,
Um, I have no desire to go overseas and shoot
mhm,
competitively. So,
yeah.
yeah, I just it doesn't appeal to me. I,
It doesn't seem.
the only time I've flown overseas with guns was when I was working for the government, and that was a pain.
Mhm.
And I can't even imagine as a civilian how terrible that must be. Despite what certain guys say, oh, it's so easy, it's so easy. Nah, I'm not interested in it.
It seems like the effort and the time and the hassle is not worth its squeeze. At
Sure.
least as a single civilian, to customs and making sure you follow all the laws while you're there, and it's just like, yeah. Even going on vacation across, overseas is a pain in the butt.
Sure.
Like taking guns makes it 100 times more of a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And TSA and oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you got to shoot single stack nationals with my third favorite single stack shooter last year, Mike Stoker.
Oh yeah, Mike. Yeah, absolutely. Although, however, I feel like I kind of broke Mike a little
Yeah.
bit because he no longer shooting single stack.
Well, he was on a podcast last night I was listening to with Trevor Cotter, and he
Mhm.
he was going to switch from single stack to limited after single stack nats at the beginning of the year, but since it got pushed back into September, it's just like meh.
Ah,
And it's just so much, and you're like, he wants to be part of the big boy. Well, and Atlas doesn't make 1911s anymore. Well, single stack guns. They're
right.
all in the double stack game, which I can understand. And showed the cool new IPSC gun. I mean, the Artemis he's shooting now for limited is pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the juice is with the double stack guns right now, for
Mhm.
sure. For
Until everyone
sure.
wants a single stack gun again, and then.
Yep. Yep.
But what? Just like I hear all the time from Steve Fisher, what is old is new, and what's new is old. It's a
Yep.
cycle. Nothing really now in the firearms industry is never really new. It just
Yeah.
revolves back around. Just like I think the biggest thing now is 12 o'clock bounded red dots on your scope. Where because they went to 45s, now they're back to
Right.
tops for guns
Yeah.
and
Because
back
all
to
of
the
a sudden they
1.5 mount.
realize, yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. All of a sudden they realize, like, oh, if I mount this red dot on top of my variable power, it's actually basically the same as a 193 mount. Oh my gosh, how
Hmm.
crazy! Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I was talking to my friend Alan Normandy from Battle Comp Enterprises
Hmm.
the other day about all these things being cyclic, and he's like, I remember when we were shooting isosceles, and then we were told we had to shoot Weaver, and then it was isosceles again. The difference in shooting techniques from lock armed or to,
Hmm.
unlocked elbows, and how everything, not just technology wise, but technique wise, is cyclic as well. And it's just, it was a great conversation. It's very interesting how the shooting world goes, and it's just like, you know, the military takes from competition, law enforcement takes from competition, and then we reverse. Competition takes from the military, and so on and so forth, and then it reverses again, and it's always very interesting to me.
It is. I have one viewer question, then we're gonna get towards the end of the show.
Oh, are
I
we
mean,
live?
no,
Oh,
it's just I kind of segue a little bit, but
gotcha.
um, this guy asked advice for aspiring gunsmith slash wannabe 1911 builders who can't go to school.
Oh, okay. That's hard. That's
It is.
really hard. Um, I am a huge proponent of the apprenticeship route for gunsmiths, especially guys that want to specialize. If I went to a gunsmithing program um, because I knew that at the end of it, if I did all the things right, I would be a gunsmith, and then I could pursue my own endeavors. I had a very, very good friend, still have a very, very good friend, Bob Miller of Miller Custom 1911s, who taught me a lot. And I had hoped, to be his apprentice for a long, long time. But that didn't happen due to, we were in the same spot. He had to move because he took another job doing other things. So I had a little bit of apprenticeship with him, and I would have loved to have worked under him for a long, long, long time. Your best bet as an aspiring gunsmith, especially 1911, 2011 gunsmith, is to become an apprentice under someone that is already doing it. It's also the hardest way to do it because the apprenticeship style of learning is dying. There's less demand for high level guns these days, which I can't even say that. It's very different. The world is very different because production guns have gotten so much better. They've also custom guns, while they have percentage-wise not increased that much, price-wise, they absolutely have increased in price. To get a great gun nowadays, you are absolutely spending $5,000 for a true custom gun. When back in the day, you would have spent $2,100 for a full-on custom race gun. So it's a little different, and the small shops are not taking on apprentices. But if you can find someone that will, that's the best route to do it.
And they got to find an actual gunsmith, not an armorer.
Correct.
I know that's one of your biggest things is like, an armorer is not a gunsmith. And
Yep. Well, and along with that, I'm always one of my things is not all gunsmiths are the same. Mm-hmm. There are crappy gunsmiths out there. I'll give you an example. Listen, mistakes happen, right? We all make mistakes. I had a shooter this weekend at a match whose Glock had been worked on by a gunsmith. I don't know who the gunsmith was. I don't know anything about it. But I can tell everything had been titanium nitrided, and it was very interesting gun build.
So everything was shiny and gold.
Yes. Okay. Yes, correct. Which is very much, I don't basically do any of that. So it kind of tells me where it came from. But every time he would press the trigger, the gun would fire 2 rounds. One on the way back, one on the way out. Boom, boom. Basically turned it into a binary trigger, which is a common problem for guys that work on Glocks that don't know what they're doing when they work on Glocks. I said, oh, well, here's your issue. This is how you can fix it. Take it to a gunsmith. He said, I just got this back from the gunsmith. He built it for me. And I said, okay, call him up and tell him what's going on. He should know exactly how to fix it if he's a real gunsmith. The reality is there's a lot of guys, especially with Glocks and ARs, that are calling themselves gunsmiths, and they are barely armorers. And there's nothing, let me say this, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being an armorer. 100%. I support that. There are things you do not need a gunsmith for. You need an armorer for. You need to swap parts. You need an armorer, right? You don't need a gunsmith, and you probably don't want to pay gunsmith prices for swapping your springs, right? At $85 an hour. When an armorer will charge you $15 to swap everything. But not all gunsmiths are the same. So,
and it's kind of like your instructors. Vet your gunsmith.
Yep, absolutely.
Follow that lineage if you can, and vet your gunsmith. And I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask people, who did that for you. I mean, if you go to a match, everyone's gonna let you dick with their gun at a safe table. So it's like, well, who did this work? I like that.
Yeah.
You worked on Jedi's guns. You fixed. You cut off beaver tails on striker guns, and and do stock Glock trigger mods, and But you are 1911 and double stack 1911 builder, and that's your wheelhouse. And that's going to be different than a precision rifle wheelhouse.
Sure.
Everyone's a little bit different, but you got as a consumer, they should know that they've got to, like anything, vet them. Google's your friend. YouTube's a better friend.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you even made a video about that with John when they were at
Yeah.
your shop.
Yep. Absolutely.
And my most favorite questions coming up, and I steal this directly from Scott because I love it. What are things that people can either stop doing or start doing to get better?
Gosh. Okay. I don't remember off the top of my head what I said in Scott's podcast when he asked me, but I've got some definite things that people need to stop doing. Number one, stop doing this trigger reset crap. It's not helping you at all. Number two, stop believing your own hype. That goes for all of us. Your self-image is important, but don't lie to yourself. Do not lie to yourself. Use these metrics, okay? Stop believing that you are the greatest gunfighter or the greatest shooter known to man, unless you really are. And even then, if you believe that, you're going to fail because someone is always going to find you that is slightly better. And it changes from day to day to day who is better. So don't believe your own hype. Don't let your ego get in the way of your shooting. And don't let your ego get in the way of your learning. Okay? That's the big thing, because it will. Your self-image will get in your own way, and you will not learn things that you should be learning.
Right. And then they'll blame the instructor on, I didn't learn anything from them. Well, that's not your fault that you checked out 3 hours ago on day one.
Yep. And that's a great point. We've had shooters in class that they just won't try the techniques, right? Because their ego tells them, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm better than that. Well, you're not, because I'm doing the technique and I just outshot you. Give it a try, because it may not work for you, but it might, and you will be a better shooter for it. Let your ego go. Let your resume go. Stop what you did, and that's another thing that people need to stop doing. Stop letting your resume be, how do I put this? Your resume is not your current capability. Okay. I was in the Army once. I am not in the Army now. They are not the same thing, right? So what I can do now is not what I could do then. And what I do now is definitely not the same as what I did then. So what I did before, while it has some applicability in certain techniques, being in the Army doesn't mean I know how to shoot. And honestly, I would say I got out of the Army not really knowing how to shoot. Certainly not shoot handguns. So don't let your resume like that think you have some credibility in certain tasks.
It's kind of like stay in your lane.
Yeah, exactly. But understand too what your lane is.
That's a better way to put it. Know where your lane is.
Yeah. Because there are some people you're gonna tell to stay in their lane when you are so far out of your lane that you should not be commenting. Especially when we start getting into the topic of experience. Let me tell you, your gunfight is a great story, but probably didn't give you all this experience that you think you have. The dude who has spent hours upon hours upon hours on the range shooting his gun and dry firing his gun has more shooting experience than you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard truth for a lot of guys. All right. So let's just be very clear on what our lanes are before we start shitting on people, essentially. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, yeah. Uh, I think those would be the big things. All of those would
And
be the big things.
and I couldn't agree with you more, sir. I mean, you put it so eloquently and precisely how we needed to put it, and so
Thank you.
and it's what people need to hear. I mean, honestly, it's beside honestly, I'd love to get a banner and put it in front of every class, and it says "check ego here." Be like,
Yep.
this is the line. Your ego does not go past this line, you know, and it makes a better learning experience. And at
It
least
does.
for and if you just it's like I'm gonna learn, it might not be exactly what I'm looking for in a class. I might be a self defender going to a competition class. I'm gonna check what I know at the door. I mean, well, not my skills, but check what
Mhm.
conceived notions you have of this class. I mean, you already signed up, so you kind of already are interested in taking it. It's not like someone that paid for your own class, paid for you to take this class, and you had no bias about it. You've already paid for it at that point, so just learn. Truly have that open mind that everyone asks you to bring to a class.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And like I tell everybody I talk to, I will listen to whatever you have to say. I will try it in dry fire or live fire and give it actually a shake. Not just, oh, I did it for 5 minutes and it doesn't work for me. No, I'll give it a try, and if it doesn't work, I'll give it back. I'll say it didn't
Yep.
work, but this is X, Y, and Z, Y, and that's why.
Yep. And make sure too, and you bring up a really good point. Give it a real try. Don't sit there outside of mechanical advantages, right?
Hmm.
Don't sit there, do something one time and go, I don't like it. You didn't really try it. You did it once, probably incorrectly because you were trying to feel it out, and then you threw it away. Give it a fair shake. Really try. Give it a chance, just like you said.
Hmm.
Uh, that's a great point.
It is. And AJ, do you have any sponsors besides your own company, or? And that's the
Nope.
best way to do it, I honestly think.
I didn't choose to do it that way. I will tell
Right.
you that. Um, and maybe this is good for some guys to hear. Um, I approached companies about sponsorships. This is what I can offer you. This is what I'd like to do. What can I do to help you guys? And they said, that's cool. We're not interested. Okay, cool. Some of them, yeah, we're very interested. And then they won't return my calls 2 months later.
Hmm.
Um, so at this point in my sponsorships, I have no sponsors, and I really like it.
Hmm.
I really like it. Uh, it has given me freedom to do literally whatever I want. Yes, it is more financially taxing. I pay for every round I fire. I pay for every holster I have. Obviously, I pay for every gun, every piece on my gun. Uh, I pay for every piece of kit I use, full price, pretty much.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, um, and it's fine. I'm okay with it because I can afford to do it. Now, yeah, I would love sponsorships on certain things, you know, but you don't need the sponsorship. You don't need the jersey with 400 sponsors on it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm kind of happy that we don't have sponsors.
And
So
see, that's the way you can dictate how you choose and who you deal business with. This not having some third party tell you can't associate with this person or XYZ. It's just nice to be free,
it is.
like America should be
Yep.
free.
Yep. And that's the thing, man. I can do
Hmm.
whatever I want. I can use whatever holster I want. I can shoot whatever gun I want. I can wear whatever I want.
Hmm.
You know, I'm happy about it. I am
Right.
happy about
Now, where can they find you, AJ? Besides on the longest Instagram handle ever.
it. Yes. So you can definitely find me on the longest Instagram handle ever, which is practical underscore performance underscore org. Uh, You can also find me on Facebook under Practical Performance Training. You can find me on the actual internet. Practicalperformance.org is our website, which we are working on a new website to kind of bring us back into like the 21st century, because it's a little outdated, I admit. But you can find us there. You can check us out on the YouTubes. There's going to be a lot more YouTube content coming. Yeah, so that's I think that's everywhere. Also, check out the Practicast. You'll be listening to some back episodes for now, but
They're so good though, guys. They're nice tidbit bites of like 30 minutes.
yes.
You can listen to them on lunch or on a break. They're wonderful.
Yep, except for our interviews, which go longer because I love talking to people. Almost everything is about 30 to 45 minutes purposely. We try and keep it so you guys can just listen and get that information in a short amount of time.
Yeah, because I think you interviewed Jedi and Matt Little, if I'm correct.
Yep. I think the only two interviews on there are Jedi and Matt Little. And now there'll be a Tim Herron, which I think that one's an hour and a half long. But I prefer to put the interviews all out at once because I hate when people split an interview into like 3 segments, but I got to wait a week in between each segment.
Right, and you leave it a cliffhanger, and it's terrible. It's like,
Yep. So,
yeah. There we have it. I'm going to thank you, AJ, again for coming on. I greatly appreciate your time, and this has been an awesome one of my favorites. We've almost beaten the longest record of my podcast, but it's okay, only by a couple minutes. But hey, I appreciate it. This was a fun talk, my man. Thank you for coming on. I greatly appreciate it. And to my listeners and viewers, thank you for checking us out. I greatly appreciate you watching. I'm not going to ask you to like, share, subscribe, but if you want to, go right ahead. New podcasts coming out whenever they come out, and I greatly appreciate it. And we'll talk to you next time. Catch ya.